Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome. My name is Heather, and on this channel we like to walk a very fine line between a shopping addicted makeup monster and a responsible adult with a makeup hobby. Now, I really enjoy eyeshadow singles, duochromes, multichromes, blush, highlight, lip gloss, basically everything except pressed glitter, and today we're going to be talking about the 20 plus a bonus palettes that have the most unique color stories in my collection. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, stick with me. We're getting into it right now. And unfortunately I did not film this look because it was very experimental and I wasn't sure if it was going to come together nicely, but if you do end up liking this look, let me know and I can give you, I can film something if you're interested in seeing it. But basically this is the Juvia's Place Douce palette, which is a retired palette, and I have an iridescent multi-chrome from Divina Cosmetics called Fairy Fire, I think, on the inner corners to kind of give this like pop of neon. It looks a little brighter in person. On camera it definitely looks a little softer, which I think is because my lights are pretty overblown. Let's talk about some palettes. So these are not in any particular order in terms of ranking. I'm basically just going to go from biggest to small, or smallest to biggest, I guess, because that's how I have them stacked up here. But I pulled what I thought was going to be 10, ended up being 15, then a short while later was 18, and I was like, you know what, let's make it a perfect 20, and then by the time I found 20, I found 21, so 21, not a glamorous, nice round number, but we'll live with it. So the first one that we'll talk about is the Colourpop Just a Glitch palette. This one is like a mint and lilac color story. I don't have anything else in my collection that pulls in that particular color family, so I definitely thought that it was interesting for that reason. I do think the metallics in this one though are pretty soft, so if you like, you know, that really bold, impactful kind of metallic, this is not the one for you, but I do think that it's cute. It's nice soft pastel. The next one to talk about is the Kaleidos Futurism Astro Pink. This is the Futurism 3 palette, and this is one of their 6-pan palettes, which I think they're kind of going away from, which is really disappointing because the packaging on these is like fire. I mean, it's like it's got some metallic elements in it. Ugh, I think that's so cool. Anyway, here's the color story though. Color story has these really beautiful kind of like rosy neutral shades. You've got one really pretty kind of metallic lavender here, a pop of fuchsia, and then you have this really beautiful dark blue kind of almost duochrome moment, and then a black with a lot of sparkle in it. The black definitely just translates as a regular black on your lid, but I don't have any other very concise color stories like this that are this pretty and that I feel like I can still be quite versatile with, so this one made the list for that reason. Only thing I don't like, the shade names on this, I hate that. Somebody showed that they glued it to the back of the packaging, which I'm like, that's really smart, but I don't want to ruin my packaging like that. So there's that on that. The next one to talk about is the Pinky Rose Exotic Peacock palette, and it's kind of this like grungy, peacocky, blue, green, purple kind of color story. I don't think I have anything that hits all three of these like color families in grunge, because I feel like there are plenty of like green, blue, purple palettes out there if you look hard enough. I mean, I have like half a drawer of them, but in terms of like the really grungy tones, I don't think I have anything like that. So this one really struck a chord with me for that. I think this is a really pretty palette. If I recall correctly, very early on in my channel I have a video with this palette, but that's going to be some rough footage, so watch at your own risk. It's a good quality palette though. Alright, next one to talk about would be the BH Passion in Paris palette. If you haven't picked this palette up, I would definitely consider doing it because I don't know what Makeup Revolution is going to do to BH Cosmetics, but this palette is, I think, so pretty. You've got this beautiful cool toned color story, reds, blues, purples, a couple pops of neutral here, but again, just very soft. I think this has a lot of versatility, and I love the way that this color story comes together. So I think this one becomes very unique. I know when I was using this one, I could not put it down because it was just so pretty on the eyes. So definitely unique and had to be included here. This is gonna start to get messy, you guys. Good enough. So the next one I want to talk about is the Odenzai Hella palette. This is a collab with Angelique Nyqvist. You're going to see a lot of collab palettes in here, and I think that kind of says something about like the makeup industry, in that it's not until we collaborate with an individual that we start to see these really diverse and interesting color stories. A lot of the color stories that we see that are not collaborative tend to kind of be redundant in a way. So this one, the Hella palette. The only palette that I have in my collection that is somewhat similar to this is the Alien Cosmetics, Unearthly Cosmetics, what is it, the Strawberry Milkshake palette, Strawberry Shake, Strawberry Smoothie, something like that palette. And that's a 9-pan palette. It has some primary like greens and pinks in it, but this one I feel like is a little bit more unique because it pulls these very grungy tones, almost these like pukey beigey yellows, and then it has these very strong primary pinks. This shade here is like a true peach shimmer, which I don't see very often in eyeshadow palettes. I think we end up pulling a lot more pink most of the time, but I really appreciate that. You've got multi-chromes in here, you've got duochromes in here, and a metallic black. So I think in terms of the colors that are in here, this is definitely more unique than the Unearthly Alien Cosmetics palette, and I included it here because I feel like there's so much enough different from that palette to say that it's still unique in my collection. I almost dropped it, you guys. Get your life together. Now this one I almost didn't include, and if I had to get rid of one, I would probably take this one out because it's very similar to the Beauty Bay Book of Magic palette, but this is the Beauty Bay Age of Opulence palette, and I put this in here because it just has this really beautiful array of like jewel tones that are like deep blues, deep teals. You've got these deep kind of burgundy, like winey purple shades, and then you've got some really pretty metallics. Now these are your only 3 metallics that sort of pool with those nice like deep colors, which is kind of disappointing. You have a lot of neutral metallics, but I do think that this color story is really interesting, really unique, and because it is so vivid, it's different enough from everything else in my collection to say that this is unique. Next one up on the docket is the Give Me Glow Bad Witch Club. Now this palette, I didn't buy it initially, but then I started seeing people do looks with it, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll just be going to buy that. And it's just this really pretty color story. You've got some blues, some kind of tealy greens, a couple of peachy pink colors, and then purples. And I think it is very pretty. The only downside for me, sorry you guys, I keep getting hair in my lip gloss. The only downside for me is the 3 shimmers that are in here are very like satin, kind of like old school metallic shades. They're not, you know, really vibrant. They don't have like a lot of shift to them. They don't have extra sparkle in them. So when I use them by themselves, I feel like I need to pull something else in to kind of amp it up and make it look a little bit more impressive. But that's my personal preference. As far as the actual palette quality itself though, this is really nice. Alright, and then I have 2 palettes to talk about from Alien Cosmetics, which is now Unearthly Cosmetics, but I have old packaging and it's whatever. The first one is the Not Normal palette, and I don't think there are many grungy purple and green color stories out there. You've got, again, kind of these like pukey, greeny shades here. You've got some more primary type greens, this really beautiful metallic, these 2, you know, kind of like purpley lavender metallics, and then you've got just a handful of neutrals. I think this is a really cool color story. I have not yet played with this one, but I had to include it in terms of the color story potential. I've seen so many cool looks. Did I not do anything with that one? I guess I haven't. I think I've tried to dupe the vibes of this one, and that's why I'm thinking of that, but I've seen a lot of looks that look really interesting with this one, so I wanted to include it here. And then this one I have used. This is the Hauntingly Glamorous palette. Again, this is a collab. Does it say who it's a collab with? Yes, Sydney Nicole. So sorry, I don't watch Sydney Nicole. I don't know who she is personally. But the palette looks like this on the inside. You've got these really pretty like deep burgundies. You've got some purples, some blues, some kind of like funky shades here. This periwinkle shade is pretty. The trouble is with some of these shades though that they don't show up very impactful for me. And I feel like when they blend together, they start to look too similar. So like, for example, these 2 shades, even though this one is more of a deep into teal and this is a true navy, they look very similar on the lids. You can't distinguish the 2 of them when you're blending them together. These shades here pool quite light and are almost not visible on my skin tone, and I'm pretty fair. So for me, it's kind of a frustrating palette to use, but I do really like the color story, and the whole like vibe of the palette's pretty cool. So, oh, this next one, I'm so excited. Okay, so the next one to talk about, I'm sorry, my camera keeps going in and out. I don't know why it's doing that. I guess it's on an autofocus rampage today. Next one to talk about is the Blend Bunny Surge palette. And I pulled this out because yes, there's like 1,000,000,001 rainbow palettes out there, but I've never seen a rainbow palette like this. You've got a pastel, you've got sort of like a mid-tone, almost bordering on like a deeper toned shade for each of the rows here. I think in most brands' color stories, this is about as deep as they truly go, unless they're including like a really dark brown or a black. And so the fact that that's kind of your mid-tone in this palette I think is so cool. And then you've got this whole shade of like blackened versions of each of these colors. Again, I think that's awesome. A row of metallics, and these metallics are absolutely fire. They have this butteriness that is like, I can't even explain it. The butteriness of these is phenomenal. Like the formula on these, I love. And then a row of neons. So I've never seen this compilation of rainbow palettes, and I feel like they did a really good job kind of putting this one together. So had to call this one pretty unique as well. The next one to talk about, this is an old retired collab palette as well. This is the Pirates of the Caribbean and Lorac palette. This came out, gosh, 2016 maybe, 2017, something like that. And it looks like this. It's this really pretty grungy kind of cool tone color story. You've got like a duochrome in here that's sort of that black blue duochrome. You've got some, like a lot of actually like very light, almost white shades. You've got this kind of it's almost like a hazy sea glass kind of a shade that's like mint, but it's deepened. It's just such an interesting shade. And so I think this one, because of its cool tone color story, the fact that it's got some interesting pops of red and blue and green within here, I think that makes it a really unique color story in my collection. Jumping off of that, we have the NYX Ultimate Utopia. This, I think, is the biggest palette that I'm going to show you here today. And normally I don't like palettes this big, but I was shopping with my husband. He took me into Ulta and was like, just grab some stuff. And I had been eyeing this for ages. It was on sale that day, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to get it. Like, I want to try it, might as well. I really like the color story of this palette, and although it is enormous and kind of cumbersome to store, I think it's a really pretty color story. I love the inclusion of all these kind of like soft, very cool toned like grays and blues. And then you have some other colors throughout the palette, but most of them again still pull kind of on the cool to neutral side. The metallics in here, like this one, this one, this one, this one, they are so buttery and like so ultra metallic on the lid. I really enjoy how those look on the lid. I think you can make a lot of very diverse looks with this one, and I don't see a lot of color stories that can go sort of this like grungy, deep neutral road and then also pull in the cool tones. So for me, this made it onto the list. Alright, I think we're about halfway done, but I didn't count the palettes, so it's whatever. The next one is a 6-pan palette. This is from Unique Beauty, and this is the Dark Souls palette. This was their Halloween launch, and it looks like this. I love this palette. Now, the only drawback is their mattes are kind of a thinner formula, so I would use like a white base or a lighter base than your skin tone to kind of compensate for that. Or you can pull mattes from something else, but I think even the shimmers in here are phenomenal. You have this really pretty like blue, pink, fuchsia kind of duochrome slash multichrome, probably more duochrome, but very like flaky and beautiful. You got this wonderfully beautiful dark purple, which is showing up blue on camera. I don't know why my camera always does that. If you know, leave me a comment. And then like a gunmetal black. Very pretty color story. I've loved every look that I've done with this one. When I ranked all of the Unique Beauty palettes that I had in my collection, this one made it to the top, so no complaints. Alright, next one is technically a collab as well. This is the Colourpop and Mavericks palette. When these went on sale, initially I was like, well, I don't care anything about basketball. Like, these are, I think these are basketball. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't really care about basketball, so I skipped over them entirely. But then I started looking at the actual color story of the palettes, and I actually ended up picking up 4 of the palettes because of the color stories. So this one for the Mavericks has this really cool, like, blue-gray color story, but I like the fact that it's not just like your traditional like ocean blue, royal blue, navy blue kind of thing. Like, they took it and they went in kind of a different direction. You've got kind of you know, these very grayed out blues, and then you have this kind of iridescent blue-white that I like. I think this was a really pretty color story and a really interesting choice for Colourpop, because they don't do a lot of like interesting color stories right now. They're doing a lot of neutrals, and so I was really excited to pick that one up, and I think it's a very unique one in my collection. The next one, oh gosh, this one was worth the wait. I'll let you guys decide if you think that, but for me it was worth the wait. This is the It's Freakin' Bats palette from Shroud and Butte Bean, and it looks like this. Again, kind of on the grungy side, but you've got this like green and purple color story that I just don't see anywhere else. I mean, you go to sort of like those pukey greens on one side, and then you've got more of these like teal, green, blues on the other side. You've got this very true periwinkle shade here, a duochrome that is like a teal to periwinkle, this purple here that has some spots of gold, and then this eggplant. The shade Sam too has this really pretty, almost like greenish tinge to it that I really like and I think is quite unique. So for my collection, this one had to be mentioned. The next one to talk about, this is actually from Unicorn Gang Shop, and what did they call this palette? Secrets of the Fae or something? I don't know. I can't keep this palette's name in my head, and it's not written anywhere on the packaging, which I kind of wish it was. But this is what this palette looks like, and the inside color story again is kind of grungy, but it's like greens, blues, purples in just a different way that I've seen from some of the other palettes. It actually somewhat reminds me of one other palette we're going to talk about today, but I think there's enough difference in the two palettes that they still could both make this list. But I think this one is really nice. The metallics are definitely more of that not quite like Morphe quality, but they definitely have that kind of like private label feel. They're a little bit like thinner, but I think the mattes in here are really nice and very buttery and soft, so definitely enjoyed using this one. And then I include this palette from Colourpop. This is the Nightmare Before Christmas palette that they did. I actually was not, I had never seen this until I was an adult, but my kids became obsessed with this movie. I have no idea why, because they had not seen it, but just all of a sudden could not stop talking about it, and we watched it, I think, every day for about 2 months. So now I know everything there is to know about the movie. But anyway, so red, pink, gray color story I think is really unusual, especially for Colourpop. They don't have anything else that kind of runs in this vein, so I thought this was a really pretty color story. I love the inclusion of these blacks, like the super grungy cool tones. I am here for them, so this for me made the list for that reason. Then this is the palette that actually inspired me to film this video. I want to say, I'll have to remember who it was that originally did this video that I thought was really interesting. It might have been Alexandra Lizette. I'm not sure, but I'll try to put it on the screen if I can figure it out. But this is the palette that inspired me to do this video, and it's the Annette's Makeup Corner and Odenzai Giant Wolves palette. This is part of their Legendary Diversa collection, and it looks like this. So similar to this Secrets of the Fae, I think is what it's called, palette, you do have kind of a swampy green and a purple and a blue. But with this one, you've got the addition of this multi-chrome, which goes from a pink where you're looking at it all the way to like gold, green, and then like an icy blue. You've got these really pretty metallics here. You've got this sort of iridescent white gold kind of shade here. I think there's enough variation between the two of these that they can both be considered quite special for this particular discussion. But yeah, this one definitely was the first palette that came to my mind when I thought about making this list. And then the next one is the Club Nebula with Angelica Nyqvist. This is their Kaleidos collab, and I think this is such an interesting color story too. I mean, prior to this coming out, I don't think we saw a lot of like dark mattes in a lot of the palettes, especially collabs. So I think the fact that she did that really revolutionized that process. And then these metallics here, you have this like frosty lilac and this frosty mint that has almost like hints of pink in it. I cannot replicate those in any part of my collection. So the fact that these are so unique, I think definitely necessitates this palette being on this list. But I think it's a beautiful palette. It's a great quality. I'm sad that it's no longer available, but such is the way with collabs, I guess. These last two, I kind of went back and forth, like should I delete one of these off the list, but ultimately I decided to keep both of them for different reasons. Second to last here is the Lunar Beauty Moonspell palette, and I think this palette is really cool. Not only like the packaging is fire, right, but The inside of the palette, I mean, you have this like purple, green, and neutral color story, which again, I don't feel like we see very often. I love the formula of the metallics in here. You've got this really pretty like swampy, dark teal, I guess. I'll call it a teal for now. You have these really pretty metallics that just have a lot of like reflective quality to them. You've got some cool tones. I mean, I think this is a really pretty color story. I think it's really unique to my collection, so that's why I made this list. And then last, but I guess I won't call it least, is the Starry Night palette, and this is by Storybook Cosmetics. So this palette apparently had like 2+ years of hype going behind it. I didn't know anything about that, but ultimately decided to pick it up when they had a sale, and I really like this color story. I'm holding it to the side so the mirror doesn't blind you guys, but basically a whole bunch of blues with a couple of these like random kind of swampy greens, a pop of orange, and a pop of silver. Again, a color story that I don't see very often. I do think the colors work together really nicely. I've done a couple looks with this. This silver is like one of my best silvers in my collection, so I had to include it because it's just such a unique color story. Can you guys hear my kids laughing? They were supposed to be asleep 2 hours ago. Although in their defense, I only put them to bed an hour ago, so there's that. Anyway, so that is all of the like truly most unique color stories in my collection. I definitely want to hear from you guys. What are the most unique color stories that you have in your collection? I know there's a lot of palettes out there that have a lot of overlap, but I think these types of palettes are just the most invigorating and exciting to look at. So definitely let me know your choices down below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm going to catch you in my next video. Bye!